Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. Okay, so just a bit of background before I dive into the story. Also, sorry if this gets a bit long, but I hope it's worth it. I'm Jake, 25M, and I work in construction, running a few crews as a foreman. I've been in this field since I started working summers when I was 14, that's legal in my state, so I've got a lot of experience and get paid pretty well. For my job, I need a truck that can pull heavy trailers and handle sketchy job sites, especially in winter. That's why I drive a new lifted pickup, Ram 3500. Now let's get into it. About 4 months ago, I got off work one day and just didn't feel like cooking dinner. I decided to treat myself to a trusty Big Mac at McDonald's. After getting my order, I was about to pull out of the parking lot to head home. I was looking hard to my left to check how busy the road was before pulling out. Well, I wasn't paying great attention to what was happening in front of me, and as I was creeping forward, someone who had stopped in front of me wasn't paying attention either. I ended up barely hitting his mirror and scraping his door with my front end. I immediately reversed and hopped out. I made sure the guy was okay and apologized, knowing it was my fault. I asked him if he wanted to call the cops. Let's call him Alex. Alex says, "Nah, man, we're all good. If you just give me your insurance info, I think we can get this sorted out." I was fine with that since there was no damage to my truck and it's not required to call the cops for an accident in a private parking lot. This becomes important later. We exchange info and he seems pretty cool, so I tell him, "Hey, why don't you go get a damage estimate and I'll just pay in cash so my insurance rates don't go up. That cool with you?" Alex nods. "Yeah, that works for me. Thanks for being straight about it." We both leave, and I feel like a moron. But overall, Alex seems like a decent guy. I just hope we can get it sorted out smoothly. About a month passes and I haven't heard anything from Alex or the shop I told him to go to. Honestly, I wasn't too stressed about it because if he decided not to get it done, that's on him. Well, he calls me up one day around noon saying he can't remember my name and wants to tell the guys at the shop who sent him there. I told him my name and apparently the guys at the shop gave him a deal. Pretty sure they say this to everyone, LOL. He sends me the estimate for damages and it comes out to $2,803. This was more than I imagined, but I said, "Alright, go ahead and get it done. I'll take care of the bill afterward." "Cool, man. Thanks for being so chill about this," Alex replies before hanging up. Another month goes by and I don't hear anything until Alex calls me up while I'm at work again. He says, "Hey dude, I talked to the shop and they said they can't get me in for another 2 weeks or so. They might end up charging more if they find more damage." I respond, "Okay, sounds good. Just let me know, man. I hope it goes smooth for you, and I'm sorry for the inconvenience." He seems to take it well, and I'm really trying to just be a good person. Then he says, "Well, after talking to my wife, I'm okay if you just want to write a check for $2,900 and we can call it even." This seemed odd to me. Why wouldn't someone want their vehicle repairs all paid for? I say, "Okay, man, let's set a time and place to meet, and I'll get you paid." He liked the idea and said he'd let me know. Yet another month passes and I hear nothing again. At this point, I'm getting fed up and just want this situation to stop hanging over my head. He hits me up at 11 p.m. one night and asks if we can meet in town. I found this kind of disrespectful because I was nearly asleep and had to be at work at 5 a.m. the next day. Either way, I said that was fine and took my $2,900 cash. I also wrote up a quick contract saying this payment would be accepted as payment in full for the damages, and by accepting it, it would release me from any and all liability. I get to the meetup spot, give him the cash, and he signs the contract without hardly even reading it. He didn't even want a copy. This was a red flag to me, but I just assumed he really didn't care about it all that much. I send him a photo of the contract and head home for some beauty sleep. As you can guess by now, another month goes by with me just living life carefree and not a worry in the world about this stupid car accident. Well, I go to check my mail and I have a notice from this guy's lawyer that he's suing me for not paying after wrecking his car. This pissed me off, but I also knew I had plenty of text messages and a contract on my side. I immediately call Alex and he blocks my number. Luckily, my girlfriend works for a lawyer, so I get him updated and he says he'd love to help. He lets me know I saved my ass by writing that contract, as any contract worth over $500 is to be held up in any level court in my state. I immediately get to work on my revenge. I remember on the side of this guy's car, he had a business logo, and I took pictures of the damage. So I hop online and get to the BBB to look up who owns this company, thinking that surely he couldn't own the business because he's such an idiot. I was wrong. This guy owns the company, and I can see that he has about 12 one-star reviews, all in dispute because of his shady business practices, telling people it will cost one thing and then charging them 4 times what he said it would. Sound familiar? Remember when he said the shop might charge more than the original $1,803? That's right, he was suing me for $11,200, 4 times what the shop told him it would cost. Unbelievable. He was trying his same sneaky crap on me. My lawyer takes note of this, and we show up to court ready for war. This guy is sleazy. As we get there and all set up, he says, "You ready to give me more of Daddy's money?" with a smirk. I guess just 'cause I'm young and drive a nice truck and could afford $12,900. His lawyer gets up and starts spewing BS about me hitting and running, saying Alex barely got a picture of my license plate. He even claims I tried bullying Alex into taking a deal for only $2,900 when the damage was clearly more than that. There were obvious holes in his story, and he really didn't have much to say. Just imagine the smile on my face as my lawyer lays out the printouts of our text messages and the physical copy of the contract signed by Alex. His lawyer turned ghostly white and looked sick. After laying out all of the evidence, my lawyer pulled out a little hidden gem. The printouts of all the complaints we found on the BBB and how Alex was doing the same thing to me. That was the final nail in the coffin, as the judge said he had seen enough. The judge asked Alex for any final statements, and Alex said, "I don't even have the $2,900 anymore. Can I just get that, then we'll be okay?" Literally admitting to the judge that he had received my money and his story was just a load of horse crap. I thought his lawyer was going to strangle him. It was beautiful. The judge ended up ruling in my favor and demanded Alex pay my legal fees as well as damages and lost wages because I had to miss work to be in court. The absolute sweetest part was that this particular day, my crew was on a very high-wage job, and I was technically the one getting paid before I paid them out as subcontractors. This means I was to be paid $525 per hour, and this whole ordeal took about 5 hours. He ended up having to pay me almost $5,500. I don't think I've ever been so happy in my life. Sorry it was so long, I just really felt the need to share. Thank you to anyone who made it this far. The next one is an entitled people's story. I never thought I'd be the type of person to have issues with my neighbors. I'm pretty easygoing and like to keep to myself. But sometimes life throws you a curveball, and in my case, that curveball came in the form of Karen, my new next-door neighbor. It all started when Karen and her husband moved into the house next to mine about 6 months ago. I live in a nice area on a lake, with each house having its own little stretch of private beach. It's peaceful, quiet, and exactly what I wanted when I bought the place 5 years ago. At first, Karen seemed nice enough. She came over with a bottle of wine to introduce herself, all smiles and designer clothes. I should have known then that something was off. The wine she brought cost more than my entire weekly grocery budget. "Oh, it's just delightful to meet you," she'd gushed. "We're going to be the best of neighbors, I can tell." I smiled and nodded, not really sure what to say. I'm not exactly the best of neighbors type. I prefer to wave hello and then go about my business. Things were okay for the first few months. Karen would sometimes try to chat me up when I was out mowing the lawn or getting my mail, but I kept our interactions short and polite. I started to notice, though, that she seemed to think the rules didn't apply to her. She'd let her dog run loose, even though our neighborhood has a strict leash policy. When someone complained, she brushed it off with a laugh. "Oh, Fifi wouldn't hurt a fly." Never mind that Fifi had nearly knocked over old Mrs. Johnson while she was out for her evening walk. Then there was the time Karen decided to trim the tree between our properties without asking me first. I came home from work to find half the tree gone and a note in my mailbox saying, "I hope you don't mind, dear. That old tree was blocking my view of the lake." I was annoyed, but I let it go. It wasn't worth the fight, I told myself. I should have known then that I was setting a dangerous precedent. The real trouble started last weekend. I had gone to visit my sister for a few days, leaving early Friday morning. When I got back late Sunday afternoon, I couldn't believe my eyes. There were cars parked all up and down our usually quiet street. As I got closer to my house, I could hear music blasting and people laughing. And it was all coming from my property. I pulled into my driveway, my jaw practically on the floor of my car. There, on my private beach, was a full-blown party in full swing. At least 50 people were milling around, drinking, eating, and generally having a grand old time. There was a massive tent set up, tables groaning under the weight of food and drink, and even a small stage where a band was playing. And right in the middle of it all, holding court like some kind of queen, was Karen. I got out of my car, not quite believing what I was seeing. As I walked towards the beach, people gave me odd looks, clearly wondering who this newcomer was. I must have looked a sight, travel-worn and shocked. Karen spotted me and waved enthusiastically like this was the most normal thing in the world. "Oh, there you are, dear. I was wondering when you'd get back." I made my way over to her, trying to keep my cool. "Karen," I said, my voice tight, "what is going on here?" She laughed, a high, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. "Why, it's a party, of course. Didn't you get my message?" "What message?" I asked, feeling my blood pressure rising. "Oh, I left you a voicemail on Friday," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "I knew you wouldn't mind if we used your beach for my charity fundraiser. It's for a good cause, after all." I was speechless. I hadn't even checked my voicemail, assuming any messages would be work-related and could wait until Monday. Even if I had, a voicemail was not permission to throw a massive party on my property. "Karen," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "you can't just throw a party on someone else's property without their explicit permission. This is trespassing. You need to end this now." Her face hardened, all pretense of friendliness dropping away. "Now listen here," she hissed, leaning in close. "Do you have any idea who these people are? The mayor is here. The chief of police. Half the city council. You don't want to make a scene." I was stunned. Was she actually threatening me on my own property? "I don't care if the president himself is here," I said, my voice rising. "This is my property, and you are all trespassing. End the party now, or I'm calling the police." Karen's eyes narrowed. "You wouldn't dare." I pulled out my phone and dialed cop right there in front of her. Her face went pale. "Cop, what's your emergency?" came the voice on the other end. "I'd like to report a trespassing incident," I said, looking Karen straight in the eye. "There are approximately 50 people on my private property without my permission refusing to leave." Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She clearly hadn't expected me to actually do it. Within minutes, several police cars pulled up, lights flashing. The party quickly quieted down as officers began to make their way onto the beach. To my surprise, the chief of police himself approached us. "What seems to be the problem here?" he asked, looking between Karen and me. Before Karen could say anything, I spoke up. "Chief, this woman has organized a large party on my private property without my permission. I've asked her to end the party and leave, but she's refusing." The chief turned to Karen, his expression serious. "Is this true, Mrs. Thompson?" Karen sputtered, her composure completely gone. I left a voicemail. It's for charity." The chief shook his head. "Mrs. Thompson, a voicemail is not legal consent to use someone's property. You know this. We've had similar complaints about you in the past." I was shocked. This wasn't the first time she'd done something like this. The chief turned back to me. "Sir, would you like to press charges?" I thought about it for a moment. Part of me wanted to, just to teach Karen a lesson, but I also didn't want to deal with the hassle of a court case. "No," I said finally. "I just want everyone off my property." The chief nodded and turned to address the crowd. In a booming voice, he announced that the party was over and everyone needed to leave immediately. The partygoers, many of whom were indeed prominent local figures, looked shocked and embarrassed. They quickly began to gather their things and leave, many of them shooting dirty looks at Karen as they went. Karen herself looked like she was about to explode. Her face was red, and she was shaking with rage. "You'll regret this," she hissed at me before storming off towards her house. It took about an hour for everyone to clear out. The police stayed to make sure there were no incidents, and to oversee the removal of the tent and other party equipment. By the time it was all over, my beautiful beach looked like a war zone. There was trash everywhere. The grass was trampled, and I was pretty sure someone had vomited in my favorite rose bush. The chief approached me as the last of the cleanup was finishing. "I'm sorry about this, sir," he said. "Mrs. Thompson has been a problem since she moved here, always pushing boundaries, thinking the rules don't apply to her because of her husband's money and connections." I nodded, too tired to say much. The chief handed me his card. "If you have any more trouble with her, don't hesitate to call. And you might want to consider installing some security cameras, just in case." After the police left, I stood on my porch, looking out at my trampled yard and littered beach. I was angry, yes, but more than that, I was determined. Karen might think she'd won some sort of victory here, but I wasn't about to let this go. The next day I called a lawyer. I might not have wanted to press criminal charges, but civil court was another matter entirely. I had plenty of evidence, the damage to my property, witness statements from the police, even videos some of the partygoers had posted on social media before everything went down. It took a few months, but in the end, Karen and her husband were ordered to pay for all the damages to my property, plus a significant amount for the trespass itself. The judge was not amused by Karen's "it was for charity" defense, especially when it came out that only a tiny fraction of the money raised was actually going to the supposed cause. But the best part? The homeowners association got wind of the whole debacle. Turns out, they take a pretty dim view of members who use their connections to trample over other residents' rights. Karen and her husband were hit with a series of fines so hefty, they ended up having to sell their house and move away. The last time I saw Karen, she was supervising the movers, shooting daggers at me with her eyes as I calmly watered my newly replanted rose bush. I gave her a friendly wave. "Best of neighbors, right?" I called out. She slammed the door so hard I thought the windows would break. Now a new family has moved in next door. They're quiet, respectful, and always ask before they so much as step foot on my beach. And me? I've got a new security system complete with cameras covering every inch of my property, just in case. You know what they say, good fences make good neighbors. But sometimes a good lawyer and a sturdy security system work even better. The next one is a petty revenge story. I hate road rage or any wild driver behavior. We are operating vehicles that weigh thousands of pounds at high speed, so please chill out. So I live in a small county in the mountains. We have a lot of tourists here, but a very small local population. In my state, there is a law that the right lane is for traveling and the left lane is for passing on roads where the speed limit is 65 mph or higher. While this absolutely applies to the interstate going through my county, there are a couple state highways which are 2 lanes and vary from 30 mph to 55 mph. They are both notorious for speed traps. I will go 5 mph over the speed limit on the sections which don't go through towns, the slow sections, but that's my max. I'm a big rule follower, so I drive the speed limit, always use my blinker, and in general try to be predictable on the road. Today, on one of those highways in the 50 mph section, there were a ton of people going well under 50 mph. I got tired of passing them, getting back in the right-hand lane, and then finding yet another person going under the limit. Whatever, probably an out-of-towner. I pop into the left-hand lane. In a few miles it turns into a Y, and the left-hand side goes to my destination, while the right does not. Someone comes up behind me at a pretty fast clip, probably fast enough to get a ticket, but it's hard to tell when a car is behind you. They start riding my bumper. I speed up to 5 mph over the limit, but again I'm not getting caught in the speed trap here and refuse to go faster than that. Also in a few miles at the Y it will drop to 30 mph anyway. I can see the driver throwing their hands up in the air in disgust. The front seat passenger starts wildly gesturing at me to get over. I'm actively passing a few cars, and also I'm not required to travel in the right-hand lane on this road. When I don't get over, the honking starts. While I don't have to get over, I generally will once there is space if I can tell the car behind me wants to go faster than I will. But I really can't stand people who act like this on the road. If you want to speed so badly, then you figure it out. I don't want to have to put on my brakes to get over and slow down to under 50 mph just to appease your temper tantrum. There are maybe 3 to 4 mi before the Y left anyway. Happily drove those miles at or just above the speed limit in the left-hand lane while passing the underspeed limit drivers in the right until we got to the Y. The unhinged driver apparently needed to go to the left as well, and they needed to make the next turn I made. I very much enjoyed slowing to 30 mph when the speed limit dropped, and then slowing to the 20 mph speed limit on the next road while they were stuck behind me throwing a temper tantrum in the car. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I work in public services. It was a new role and I am the first and only one of me. Essentially, this means that my job scope can be pretty broad and I have a lot of fingers in a lot of different pies. I have also gained the reputation of a no-nonsense problem solver. Cannot for the life of me think why. So when people have issues, they tend to come to me. I was busily hashing out a few tasks last week when I get something else slapped onto my plate. A manager of a service we commission with, appropriately named Karen, has apparently been working her way through people because she isn't getting the resolution she wants. So one of the managers in finance wants me to look into this for Karen. Now, a thing to note here is that every April we increase rates along with inflation, but she didn't get it. Thing is, it's out of our hands. The services we commission from her are funded between us and another separate public service, PS2. We pay half, PS2 pay half. But we haven't paid the increase because PS2 haven't agreed anything yet. What can I say? It's the public sector. Our team's conversation goes something like, me, hey, finance manager, I can't actually do anything about this because... Finance manager, cutting me off. This is your job, it's your department that deals with these contracts, so deal with it. I don't care how, just get her off my back. Now, that's mostly paraphrased, except for that last sentence, which he said verbatim. I don't care how, just get her off my back. I write in chat to confirm I am to deal with this and you do not care how. Finance manager says yes, for Christ's sake. I crack my knuckles and get to work, sending her the following email and CCing in finance manager and my own manager. Dear Karen, I apologize for the delay in the inflationary increase for service. However, as this is jointly funded between ourselves and PS2, we are beholden to their financial timeliness. As PS2 have not yet agreed to the 4.1% increase, we are unable to process it. Regardless of how many individuals you contact, this will remain the case until PS2 see fit to approve. In instances such as these, our recourse should be to head down to the offices of PS2 and begin smacking naughty bottoms, but I fear HR would frown upon such action in these enlightened times. Might I suggest contacting PS2 yourself in order to expedite the process? I'm sure finance manager at my place of work, would be happy to direct you to the appropriate contact and answer any further questions. Warmest regards, my name. I then immediately got a Teams call from my manager where for 30 seconds all I could hear was laughing, and he asked me what was going on. I sent him the screenshots of the chat messages between myself and finance manager and relayed the Teams call. My manager told me that it was not in fact my job. How odd. And later that day, finance manager apologized, but also warned me that in the future, you should probably hold back on the bollock-withering sarcasm. People might not find it amusing. I think I'm hysterical, personally. Update. I had a Teams call from finance manager. Turns out he'd just gotten off the phone with PS2. They'd called him asking who the hell Karen is and why they received 41 separate emails from her in the past week. Seems like someone set that particular pit bull onto PS2, but whoever that person was must have made a terrible, horrible error. Because they sent her to a completely different team that were apparently very confused as to what was going on. So they sent her to another team who sent her to another team. She's currently being passed around like a spliff at uni housing. But here's the kicker. She's being passed off due to her nuisance behavior. That's a given. But also because PS2 can't authorize the uplift in her fees. She filled in her business address incorrectly back in January when we began commissioning with her. We have one address, PS2 have another, meaning that PS2 systems have flagged it as a discrepancy, and she's so busy demanding her money that she isn't responding to the urgent emails that the PS2 team have been sending out. There does not seem to be an end in sight. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.